In the quiet, unassuming town of Crestwood, nestled between the hills and surrounded by dense forests, a 19-year-old young man named Eden lived a fairly ordinary life. He delivered pizzas for Tony's Pies, a local pizzeria known for its delicious and mouth-watering creations. Crestwood was a small and close-knit community, and Eden knew most of the people by name. One brisk evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting an orange glow over the town, Eden received an order for a large pepperoni pizza. He got on his trusty bike and rode through the cool fall air, inhaling the aroma of freshly baked pizza. Following exactly the address on the order, Eden found himself on a narrow, dimly lit street. The houses stood far apart, and the streetlights cast eerie, elongated shadows. He pulled up to the address, a building that stood out among the quaint houses and was unlike anything he'd seen in Crestwood before. It was a dilapidated, unsightly inn that seemed to have been abandoned by time itself. The bricks were crumbling and the windows were covered in soot. Eden reluctantly got on his bike and climbed the creaky, old wooden steps leading up to the entrance. He hesitated and reached out to ring the bell, but not before the door slowly opened, revealing a sight that sent shivers down his spine. Standing before him was a man in his 60s, dressed in a tattered and dirty woman's sweater. His graying hair was disheveled and his eyes stared with a peculiar intensity. Meeting his gaze, Eden felt a chill run down his spine. The room behind the man's back was dimly lit, and Eden's gaze turned to the bed where a young man of about 16 lay shirtless, his eyes wide with fear and confusion. Eden couldn't help but wonder what was going on in that room, but he hesitated to ask. The silence was broken by a male voice that was a strange combination of cordiality and menace. "Why don't you come in? Come in, don't be shy," he beckoned, his voice oozing an unsettling charm. "Meet Trevor. I'm sure you'll become very good friends." Eden's heart raced, his instincts telling him something was wrong. The situation was taking an alarming turn, and Eden tried with all his might to escape. In a panic, Eden managed to mutter, "I just came to deliver pizza," while holding the box tightly as if it were a shield. The man's smile widened and he replied, "Sure, pizza. How much do I owe you?" Eden named the amount without waiting for payment, as he was anxious to get away from this creepy encounter as soon as possible. The man reached into his pocket and handed Eden a wad of crumpled bills that was slightly short of the cost of the pizza. Eden grabbed the money without paying attention to the shortfall and quickly nervously walked out. As he descended the rickety stairs and got on his bike, Eden's thoughts raced. The strange encounter at this abandoned hotel had shaken him to his core. He rode back to the pizzeria, hoping to forget himself in the soothing hum of the kitchen and the aroma of baking dough. Eden's heart pounded with excitement as he recounted his disturbing experiences to his coworkers. Tony, the owner of the pizzeria, an elderly gentleman with a wealth of experience, listened to him intently, frowning his eyebrows. "Eden," Tony began, "I've lived in this town for a long time and I've heard some strange stories about this hotel. Strange things were always happening in it, and few of the locals would go near it." Eden couldn't get the image of the disheveled man and the confused boy out of his mind. Adam had a delivery man named Mark, a man who never shied away from unusual errands or unexpected meetings. They were in the middle of a hectic evening, juggling orders and navigating the chaotic restaurant world. A phone call came in and Mark wrote down the details of the order while the caller's voice crackled with unusualness. As soon as Mark hung up, he turned to Adam, the restaurant manager, and said, "Be on the lookout. That shit sounds fishy." Adam frowned, perplexed. "Then why did you take it, Mark?" Mark chuckled, his face reflecting his quirky personality. "Well, Adam, we've had our share of odd requests, haven't we? Besides, variety adds spice to the job, and I'm the strangest driver you'll ever have." Adam couldn't argue with that. Mark had a reputation for being able to act in unusual situations with a sense of adventurism that seemed almost reckless. The order came from a little old lady who claimed she couldn't make it to the door to accept the food. Instead, she told Mark to enter the house and walk to the back porch where she would wait. It was the strangest instruction Adam had ever heard, but he shrugged, recognizing that it was oddities like this that made Mark a pleasure to work with. As Mark drove to the address given, he couldn't stop marveling at the strangeness of what was happening. As he parked the car, he looked at his bag filled with steaming containers of food. The night was quiet and an eerie silence hung in the air. As he sat in the car, he thought about his loved ones, a reflex that had become almost superstitious for him whenever he found himself in any unusual situation. When he finally decided to gather his courage and head out into the unknown, he walked up to the porch of the house. Mark saw something that sent a chill down his spine. He turned his gaze toward the window, hidden by a thin curtain, and saw a male figure. The man's eyes were fixed on Mark, watching his every move. Mark couldn't make out any facial features. It was just a silhouette. The figure immediately moved sharply away from the window and was no longer in sight. He blinked, wondering if he was dreaming. The figure behind the curtain was gone. His intuition told him something was wrong. Mark's heart pounded frantically and he decided to abort the mission. He had to get out of there, and fast. He strode briskly to his car and began fumbling for his keys. Panic bubbled in his chest, urging him to leave this unsettling place behind. As he began to pull away, adrenaline surging through his veins, Mark couldn't shake the feeling that he had narrowly escaped something sinister. And then he heard a harsh and threatening voice. A man with a gun in his hand came out of the very house Mark had just run out of. He shouted to Mark, menace and recognition in his voice. "I remember you." Mark swerved to the side, narrowly avoiding a collision that could have cut his life short. Adrenaline overwhelmed him, and he raced away from this dark, creepy house. Mark's curiosity led him to a strange encounter that left him with more questions than answers. Who was it? And what were this man's intentions? These questions swarmed in Mark's mind as he made his way through the city streets, escaping the clutches of the ominous night. In One Town Hill, Emily found herself on the night shift at Tony's Pizza Haven. Everyone in the town knew each other, and life was slow and measured. For Emily, working at the local pizzeria wasn't just a job, it was a part of town life. One crisp fall evening, Emily was assigned to deliver workers for a house under construction a block away from the pizzeria. The workers were hard at work, and their burgeoning appetites led them to order a feast: a stack of hot pizza and a 2-liter soda. Emily held the steaming pizza boxes tightly in one hand and clutched a bottle of frosty soda in the other. As they approached the construction site, Emily couldn't help but marvel at the progress being made in erecting the house. The sturdy wooden frame of what would soon become the home of someone's dreams loomed in the fading twilight. She'd been to this construction site before, but this time it was different. Workers were resting near the entrance, taking a break from their hard work. Emily, always in a cheerful mood, greeted them with a smile. The crew leader, a stout man named Dave, gave her a friendly nod. "Hi, Emily, we're starving here. I can't thank you enough for bringing dinner," Dave said with a smirk. Emily smiled back at him. "No problem, Dave. We have your order ready right here. That'll be $45 for the pizza and soda." She held out her hand, ready to accept the money, but Dave did something unexpected. Instead of acting like a normal person and handing her the money, he lunged forward. His rough hand reached into her pocket, shoving a wad of money and a crumpled bill into it. Emily's heart raced and a shiver ran down her spine. It became clear that Dave wasn't just trying to hand her the money. He was trying to touch her in the most exciting way possible. Instincts kicked in and Emily acted quickly. She stepped back and demanded firmly, "What are you doing, Dave? Get your hands out of my pocket." Dave's actions were strange. It was as if time had slowed down. He fiddled with his hand in her pocket for what seemed like an eternity, his eyes full of anxious tension. Emily's voice trembled, but she didn't let fear get the better of her. "I'm warning you, Dave. Take your hand out of my pocket immediately, or I'll call the police." The employees, who at this time were relaxing and enjoying a break, froze in shock. Dave, as if brought back to reality, pulled his hand out of her pocket, a look of confusion and embarrassment flashing across his face. Leaving the construction site, Emily couldn't shake the feeling of unease. This strange incident made her feel vulnerable, even in a city where she had always felt safe. For the next few days, Emily couldn't get rid of her thoughts about what had happened. The incident continued to haunt her, and she tried to understand Dave's inexplicable behavior. She knew him as a friendly and reliable customer, so the sudden change in his behavior left her puzzled. A few weeks passed, and gossip spread through the town. The rumors spread like wildfire, and some of them claimed that Dave was acting strangely not only toward Emily, but also toward other women in town. The incident with Emily was just the tip of the iceberg. Emily found herself back at Tony's Pizza Haven one evening, taking orders and socializing with coworkers. The pizzeria had always been the center of local gossip, and it was here that she overheard a conversation that sent shivers down her spine. A group of women huddled together, their voices hushed. They were recounting disturbing encounters with Dave at the construction site, retelling stories similar to the one Emily had told. It seemed that Dave's actions were not isolated incidents, but part of a disturbing pattern of behavior. In the serene suburb of Elmwood Grove, where the tree-lined streets radiated tranquility, lived Sheila, a cheerful and hard-working pizza delivery girl. She had been working at Luigi's Pizzeria for years, delivering delicious pies to the residents of this affluent neighborhood and bringing smiles to their faces one pizza at a time. One cool fall evening, Sheila set out on her usual route. The sun had dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the clean lawns and manicured gardens. She parked the car in front of a stately two-story house that seemed to stand out even among the luxurious residences of Elmwood Grove. Grabbing the pizza boxes, Sheila headed for the door, admiring the intricate details of the porch. Adorned with ivy and a gleaming antique lantern, she rang the doorbell, and the sound echoed through the quiet evening. The door slowly opened, revealing a dimly lit room. A small boy, no older than 5 years old, peered out of the door. His eyes were wide with an unusual combination of fear and curiosity, and his voice, barely audible, whispered, "I've been kidnapped." Sheila was stunned, her heart pounding in her chest. She couldn't believe what she had just heard. A shiver ran down her spine at the boy's statement, and she instinctively looked around for any sign of trouble. But all was calm and quiet. Before Sheila could react, a tall man in an immaculate dark suit appeared behind the boy's back. He reached out, gently took the child's hand, and pulled him back into the house. "Thank you," he said with a forced smile, "for delivering the pizza." The door closed, and Sheila was left on the porch stunned and confused. Questions and doubts swirled in her mind. Was the boy telling the truth, or was this some kind of twisted prank? She couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Unable to forget the disturbing encounter, Sheila decided to trust her instincts. She quickly dialed the Elmwood Grove Police Department's emergency number, and within minutes a patrol car pulled up to the house. She told the two officers about the strange encounter, and her voice shook with concern. They exchanged glances, clearly taking the situation seriously. One of the officers, Detective Mark Anderson, reassured her. "You did the right thing to call us," he said, and they prepared to inspect the house. Meanwhile, Sheila watched anxiously from her car as the officers pulled up to the front of the house. They knocked on the door, waiting for an answer. Moments later, the door opened and the same man smiled welcomingly at the officers. Sheila couldn't hear their conversation, but it appeared to be friendly. The atmosphere behind the house seemed as serene as ever. Detective Anderson, however, was not easily deceived. He kept a stern expression on his face, his intuition telling him that something was wrong. A quick and thorough search of the inside of the house was made, and they soon discovered a small windowless room in the basement, where a mattress lay on the floor and a few toys were scattered about. It was a grim sight that sent shivers down the detective's spine. The officers came face to face with the man, and as they pressed on, the facade began to crumble. His facial expression went from cordial to defensive, and he stammered his answers. It became clear that he was hiding something sinister. Back on the street, Sheila watched the situation unfold, and her heart pounded frantically. She couldn't shake the guilt she felt for trusting her intuition and making that important phone call. She realized that a little boy's safety could depend on their actions right now. The police officers demanded answers to questions from the man, and as the tension mounted, he finally confessed. He had indeed kidnapped the child and held him captive in the basement for several days. The truth was far more horrible than Sheila could have imagined. The detectives immediately proceeded to arrest him, read him his rights, and handcuffed him. Sheila was overcome with relief when she saw the kidnapper taken into custody. The boy was safe and justice had been served. As Sheila testified to the police, she felt a renewed sense of responsibility to her community and realized that she had played a crucial role in preventing a terrible tragedy. A couple of days ago, Miguel found himself in a maze of streets in an unfamiliar area of the city. His task was simple: to deliver pizza to an apartment complex located in the very center of the city. As an experienced Domino's driver, Miguel had learned a few tricks of the trade. One of those tricks was the wisdom of parking behind apartment buildings to save time. The narrow streets and endless traffic lights gave him enough headaches to learn this valuable lesson. The evening was cool, dusky, the kind that made neon signs and streetlights flicker, painting everything in a surreal light. Miguel approached the complex, noting that it was a bit dilapidated. But in this part of town, that wasn't surprising. He was focused on getting the pizza to the customer as quickly as possible. As he approached the entrance to the multi-story building, his thoughts were filled with the joy of finally finishing his delivery. But barely as he approached the door, chaos reigned in his world. "Lie down." The sharp command pierced the calm of the evening like a dagger. "Don't move." This time the command was accompanied by a cacophony of voices, shouts, and barked orders. Miguel froze, his heart racing. A list of possible problems ran through his mind. Had he accidentally parked in a no-parking zone? Had he inadvertently violated traffic laws? His anxiety rose dramatically. Instinctively, he turned to his left, looking for the source of the noise. To his surprise, he saw a group of police officers armed to the teeth, with guns at the ready. The realization of the gravity of the situation sent a chill down his spine. The policemen's faces were tense, their eyebrows furrowed. They were clearly engaged in a high-stress operation. Miguel could see the determined expressions on their faces, and their fingers rested on the triggers of their weapons. The scene looked like something out of a Hollywood action movie, but it was all happening right before his eyes. Panic gripped Miguel, and he realized he had to act fast. The last thing he wanted was to be taken as a threat. He dropped the pizza box to the ground, its cheesy contents spilling out, and threw his hands in the air. He knew he had to make his surrender clear and unequivocal. One of the officers, perhaps the one with the loudest voice, called out to him, "You there, get down." Miguel obeyed and knelt down. A policeman, tall and stout, walked up to Miguel and grabbed his arm. The grip was firm, pulling Miguel away from the potential line of fire. Miguel's heart was still pounding frantically, and his thoughts raced even faster. What had he stumbled upon? Why were the police here, and what was going on in this apartment? He couldn't help but fear the worst. He watched in awe as several more police officers moved towards the apartment that seemed to be the epicenter of this chaos. After a few moments, the apartment door creaked open and several men emerged with trembling hands raised in surrender. Miguel watched with widened eyes as the scene unfolded before him. Fear, uncertainty, and fatigue were evident on the faces of the people leaving the apartment. They were clearly on edge, their eyes darting around nervously as they surveyed the scene. Miguel couldn't help but wonder what had happened in that apartment. What had caused the police to gather in such large numbers, and why were they so urgently on the case? He had a lot of questions, but at the moment he was focused on not accidentally getting caught in the crossfire. Miguel pulled out his cell phone and dialed the number of his Domino's store. His coworkers must have been concerned about his inexplicable delay, and he felt it necessary to bring them up to speed. He recounted the strange turn of events, the confrontation with the police, and the tense situation he found himself in. Meanwhile, the customer who ordered the pizza also deserved an explanation. He dialed the customer's number and talked about his experiences. The customer, realizing the unusual nature of the situation, was surprisingly responsive. Moreover, he insisted on increasing the tip from the original $3 to a generous $15. In appreciation for Miguel's dedication and for standing up to such an unusual situation, Miguel couldn't help but reflect on the wild ride he had just experienced. It had been, without a doubt, the most unusual and stressful event of his career as a Domino's delivery man.